How do you think it's going to collapse?
So if you're always printing more money and you're making more debt, at one point, the entire system is just not feasible anymore. It cannot carry itself anymore. So if they keep doing what they are doing today, they're gone in 11 years, or the currency will be inflating like crazy and everybody will lose trust in the US dollar, which is a world currency and used for basically everything. So what will happen from that point on if people lose trust in the US dollar? I don't know, like the entire financial system is just doomed to fail at one point. So the question is just, it's not if it will happen, it's just when will it happen and what will happen then.
What made you so depressed of the financial systems?
Traditional financial system is very much centralized, right? They're sitting at the printing machine and they decide how much money they print and whom they lend it to. And obviously in this world, money is the basis for everything. So any intention in the world is linked to money. So if anyone is doing anything, the intention is mostly 99% of the time, it's always money. So it has a huge impact on all of us. But I truly believe that Bitcoin actually has a chance to elevate the world by actually shaping our society and make it fair and make them obtain their value that they have and not just put everybody in a hamster wheel. So we are basically a Bitcoin payment solution. The idea is that we are as convenient as possible to the merchants and the consumers. So the merchant, he doesn't really care about Bitcoin. He cares about his core business. He wants to sell his goods to his consumer without a lot of work. So the idea is to enable him to accept this additional forms of payment. So he's getting the currency that he wants, that he needs in order to pay his bills, that he wants to see on his bank statement by the end of the day, while we take care of everything else. The transactions are now scalable to infinity. For you, you just have like instant payments in real time without any fees. So it's actually a dream for consumers and merchants.
Hi, and welcome back to New World in the Making. In this episode, I'm joined by Daniel Tesch Martins, co-founder of Mion Group, a Bitcoin payment solution that makes everyday transactions actually possible. So we explore what it really means to use Bitcoin as a currency and not just as an investment or an asset, and what it takes to build a startup around that vision. We talk about how this works, why it matters, and why this could be a big, big deal for the new world that's emerging. Let's dive in. Just a quick one, and I promise quick one, before we dive into the episode. I really want to take a moment to just say thank you for being here. And to keep this work alive and help it reach even more people, I need your help. Just by hitting that subscribe button, you're becoming an active part of this new world in the making. And you're enabling this conversation to grow into directions we can't even imagine yet. So thank you truly. And now, for real, let's dive into today's conversation. Daniel, thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Before we go into Mion, how did you come to this place that you're in today?
What do you mean by place?
You can define that as whatever you feel like. Maybe starting a Bitcoin startup. Maybe it is startup in general, how you got to the place that you're in. Even founding a startup, it's your second one already. It's like how did you
Well,
come?
it's technically the first one. We just changed the name and merged with a Norwegian company.
Okay.
But well, I would say it started from frustration with existing, I don't know, like traditional work environments where you're just doing stuff that is completely meaningless and you're just going into an office day by day and you're just not seeing any progress is soul crushing to me. So I need to do something meaningful with my life, and this opportunity came up, and usually I'm risk adverse. So it really took me a lot of convincing in my head to actually say, okay, let's quit my safe job that actually gives me a stable income to try to do this and pursue it. But in the end, I was like, yeah, if I don't do this, I will regret it. So I should do it. And yeah, then it just started a journey that is basically one step after the other. Yeah.
And what kind of can you tell us about the opportunity, that how it was? Like, how did this opportunity come along?
Well, so I actually was working. I had a work colleague at a former employer, who was very, I would say, interested in creating a company or a startup or something of his own. He was a developer, and I was following Bitcoin along since my university years, and was very curious and interested in everything. But then I kind of lost interest in 2015 or so, and I haven't followed it any further. Just, okay, I know everything about blockchain. This topic's kind of old for me now. I don't follow it much more. And this guy, Fabian was his name, he just approached me, since he always had like crazy business ideas, and he always pitched them to me during lunch break. And I always picked them apart. I was like, this won't work and that won't work. And he never wanted to listen to me. And then he went on his own and tried a few things that apparently they didn't work. And someday I just get a call out of the blue, and it's Fabian, and he's like, hey, there's like this crazy development. I have to talk with you about it. Let me invite you to dinner. So we went to dinner, and he told me everything about Lightning Network and was like, hey, this is some crazy stuff happening. I want to do something in that place, and I want you to help me with that. And yeah, like somehow I wasn't aware of the Lightning Network before he told me, and then he basically told me everything about it, and I just started reading up on it, and it sounded like a crazy opportunity. And the idea was born to actually utilize Lightning now for payments, which it does make a lot of sense for, and it didn't make a lot of sense with the traditional blockchain system and Bitcoin. And yeah, then we just started that journey together.
Okay, a lot of questions here for that. But because also, how did you get into Bitcoin? Like, why did you already research Bitcoin back then? And what was it that was calling you in Bitcoin? And then you lost interest, and then now you're even...
So basically, I studied international business and management at the business school in the Netherlands, and we had really great professors. And one of my professors that influenced me the most was in international finance, basically. And yeah, I more or less learned a lot about the financial system and how it works and operates. And it actually made me quite sad and cynical. And I don't know, it felt like the world is really evil and there's not much we can do about it. And you kind of feel powerless after learning about all of this. At least I did. And then at the same time, during my university years, it was like, when was this, like 2012 or so, I learned about Bitcoin, which just kind of came up. I know it's like older, but then it just came the first time into view for me. And systems sounded like too good to be true. And like the traditional system sounded so evil and so corrupt that I was convinced that there's no way that this can survive because it will be banned. And if it's banned, nobody's allowed to use it and able to use it, and it just dies in its cradle, more or less. So I basically started reading up on it, and it made a lot of sense logically. Like everything that I learned about it was really convincing, but I was just more convinced that the banks that run the world won't allow this to happen, which I was wrong about, fortunately.
Okay. Again, maybe can you go into the depressed, like what made you so depressed of the financial systems? Because I'm not sure that a lot of us are aware of how the actual financial system operates. And then why is Bitcoin too good maybe to be true, or that actually it is true? Maybe can you unpack all these things?
Well, we will be here for a long time. We go into detail on that. But basically, in a nutshell, I would say So the traditional financial system is very much centralized, right? There are a few people that basically control all the money flow, and they print the money. They're sitting at the printing machine and they decide how much money they print and whom they lend it to. And obviously in this world, money is the basis for everything. So like, I would say any evil in the world is somehow connected to money. There's like any intention in the world is linked to money. So if anyone is doing anything, the intention is mostly 99% of the time, it's always money. So it has a huge impact on all of us. And then I learned about the International Money Bank and yeah, I don't know, like a lot of things that seem kind of evil from a juvenile perspective, where you have this romantic view about the world. And I, as a person, I like to think that we as humans should collaborate and work together to achieve some greater goods and get into a state where we are working towards progression, that everybody is doing better, the world is improving, everything is working better. And then learning about the financial system kind of felt like, yeah, we are really just working within a hamster wheel that is designed to make a few people very, very filthy rich, and everybody else is just getting exploited by the system. And yeah, I mean, you talk with Jeff Booth, inflation is like stealing everybody's money, which I wasn't aware before I actually went to university. It just felt like, okay, inflation is just there, and it was always described as, oh yeah, 2% inflation is really healthy, and
You don't even
yeah,
question it, right? Yeah.
I never questioned that. So
Yeah.
it was like, yeah, and then I kind of like, hold on a minute, why is it healthy? And yeah, anyhow, so it just yeah, it felt like a very powerful giant that is controlling everything, that is there already for a very long time and will be there for a very long time, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And okay, so Bitcoin then came as this thing that is kind of too good to be true, and it's kind of working as well. It's not being banned, and then yeah,
At the beginning, I thought it's kind of like a naive idea, because it's like it's a very interesting concept and very interesting idea, but it's kind of naive to think that they will just let this happen, right? That was my initial thinking,
Okay.
and that this will be banned. But then I didn't realize how incompetent everybody is in power, because there's something that I didn't consider.
Right.
Because now I think that they are not even aware. Like, most politicians are probably not even aware how their system works that they operate in. Otherwise, they wouldn't act the way they do.
Yeah. That's very interesting. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
And did you, so then you started this journey together to co-found Mion.
Yeah.
How did you feel crazy at that time? I don't know, because okay.
Yeah, like you mean seeing something that others were not seeing?
Exactly.
Yeah, like as I said, I'm very skeptical.
Yes.
So I'm risk adverse. So when I learned about Lightning, I was like, okay, what is something that this could have a huge impact on? And so funnily, I just worked on, so in my previous job, I worked on a project to implement the largest mobile payment solution in Austria.
Yeah.
And roll it out to, I believe, over 3 million customers, which is quite large in a country that has like 9 million citizens. So I just started learning about payments. And before that, I kind of like, to me as a consumer, payments always worked. I never really questioned it. As long as I can pay with PayPal or a bank transfer, or worst case, I can use my credit card. Most of the time, I'm too lazy to get it out of my wallet. Yeah, but I never really thought about it too much because it seemed to work from a consumer perspective. But then I was on the other side of the spectrum. I was like, okay, from a merchant perspective, payment is actually a real pain most of the time, especially if you have those large corporations like PayPal basically dictating you how much they charge you, and you don't have any influence over it, and they charge you an arm and a leg. And if you don't use them, you're losing business because a lot of consumers simply don't use your website then anymore because somebody else is accepting PayPal and it's more convenient to them. So I just been in that world, in that payment world, and then naturally Lightning came around, and immediately my thoughts were like payment. So I created a business plan and started crunching numbers and looking into like all the data that I had available. And at first I was like, I shouldn't tell anybody about this because this is like too good to be true. This is insane. How am I the only one who figured this out? And I actually thought I'm the first person who had this idea. So I was like, and then I started digging into it and I saw, there are like competitors in the US already doing this, obviously. And I'm not the first person in the world having this idea. And this is kind of like also the first things you probably learn when you do a startup. Like ideas are very cheap, and you are certainly not the first person to have this idea. But yeah, I basically were like, okay, this is too good to be true. I have to crunch the numbers, blah, blah. And I did the business plan. And then I was like, okay, where should I start? What is an anchor point to like quit my job and actually pursue this? And fortunately, we do have quite a lot of startup funding from the European Union in Europe. So I thought, hey, let's look into one of those startup funding projects. So I applied for a deep tech pre-seed grant from the AWS, which is the Austrian arm for startups that is giving away grants to fund startups and whatnot. So I wrote this very long business plan, pitched it to their committee, talked with a few. So their committee is actually very interesting because they have like experts from the industry within the committee and also professors from universities and like financial experts and whatnot. And during the pitch and the Q&A session after, it became very clear that the industry actually wants a solution like this. And they more or less, like everybody who was from the industry confirmed, that's extremely interesting. There's actually a pain that we would like to have solved. And it sounds like a really good opportunity to bring in new money into our market. And everybody from the traditional financial system was extremely skeptical. But fortunately, we got the grant, and this was like, for me, okay, now I have to do it. So,
nice. Yeah. That's really nice to hear. Also, that pre-seed funding is possible. That's really cool to hear, because sometimes you kind of like, oh gosh, where do I get the money from for a startup and all this?
Yeah, like in hindsight, it's probably easier to get it from traditional investors, but yeah, it was a good starting point.
And can you explain, now that we have already kind of covered it from the outside, like what does Mion actually do? What is the product?
So we are basically a Bitcoin payment solution. The idea is that we are as convenient as possible to the merchants and the consumers. So the merchant, he doesn't really care about Bitcoin. He cares about his core business. He wants to sell his goods to his consumer without a lot of work. He wants to focus on his stuff. He doesn't want to learn about anything else, about wallets and private keys and whatnot. So the idea is to enable him to accept this additional forms of payment, this more or less additional money that is not on the bank account, from his consumers, and allow them to pay for their goods with Bitcoin, while he's receiving euros from us. So he's getting the currency that he wants, that he needs in order to pay his bills, that he wants to see on his bank statement by the end of the day, while we take care of everything else. So we make sure that the money laundering regulations are met. We make sure that we are regulated, that we take care of the Bitcoin aspect, the Lightning aspect, so that consumers can actually pay in real time without any additional fees. And the same is basically true for consumers as well. So the user journey has to be as seamless and easy as possible. So ideally, we don't need consumer data from you. Ideally, you just scan a QR code with your own wallet and you transfer Bitcoin. You don't need to set up a wallet with us and share funds and store them there or buy Bitcoin or whatever. So it's like really designed to be very, very simple and enable people to actually use the Bitcoin, what Bitcoin actually was initially designed for, and not as a store of value.
That's a very good point because, I mean, how do you, because right now Bitcoin is mostly seen as an asset, as an investment. How do you see that transition happening? Why would someone want to spend their Bitcoin if it's an investment for them?
I think most Bitcoiners actually like to support it. Obviously, there are very different reasons why people buy Bitcoin. I would say the majority is probably just curious and doesn't want to fall behind.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of studies on that. I believe it's like 60% are just curious. They don't want to fall behind, so they buy a bit of Bitcoin. There's like a lot of people that buy it out of conviction, actually believe that this is a step in the right direction and has the potential to improve our world. And most people that actually spend Bitcoin, I would say, are probably buying additional Bitcoin once they actually spend it. At least that's what I see when I go to Bitcoin conferences and see people pay with Lightning or buy their tickets with Bitcoin or whatever. Usually they buy more to just support it. I think we have to start somewhere to actually make Bitcoin more usable. And if we want to use it as something that it was originally designed for, we have to start using it as payments or for payments. And this has a lot of positive side effects that Bitcoiners might not realize yet. But when it actually fluctuates more, by meaning if it's being used more as a form of payment, you have way more transactions than you have today, which would bring the volatility down because it would be in constant use. And you would also help it to become way more mainstream. So my belief is that, like, I don't know how ignorant you are. If you're going to the supermarket and you suddenly see, okay, button, oh, I can pay with Bitcoin at the self-checkout cash register, for instance, you're probably changing your mind that this is like a pyramid scheme and a scam, or you might reconsider your opinion on this, and you might become more interested in this topic. Because as big as Bitcoin already is, it's just about 10 to 20% of people in Europe actually own Bitcoin. Most people don't.
No, like for me, when I saw your company and your product and what you're offering, I think it was like a aha moment, because like for me, it was always like listening to Jeff Booth, and then also the conversation that we had. I also asked him like, okay, so how do we live in Bitcoin? Because he was saying how much like, if you can use and put all your energy as much as you can into Bitcoin. And I asked him, but how do we do that, right? Because like I still have to pay my bills, and usually this is all not in Bitcoin. Like there's barely anything really, especially in Europe, available for us to pay in Bitcoin. So just seeing more opportunities and things happening in that space where I can potentially also use my Bitcoin to support this, to actually put everything into that space. I think this is a massive, massive opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that. That's why we're doing this. And I'm aware that it's probably a transitional solution by paying merchants in euros. At one point in the future, it will probably shift. And ideally, if people start using Bitcoin, it becomes more and more important and bigger and bigger and bigger. And at one point, it's unavoidable and people cannot ignore it. And also regulators will have to adjust and not treat it as a money laundering scheme like they do today. And yeah, a lot of things get easier from that point on.
And do you see a shift happening? Because I think also we are not really that aware of the CBDC, central digital currencies as well. How do you see that evolving and alongside your product and Mion? Like how do you see that happening?
You mean like the digital euro, for instance?
Yes, exactly.
Well, I think it's one of those projects that is going to waste billions of taxpayers' money without any result. And then in 5 or 10 years, they just silently kill it.
Okay.
So that's it doesn't make any sense in my opinion. Euros are already digital. I can't pay with my card digitally. I don't need to carry cash around. My bank statement is digitally and everything else. And if you do design like a central, so essentially what they do is creating like a blockchain that is just going to be used, at least that's my understanding, that's just going to be used by the banks, which seems like a very inefficient system. You don't need a blockchain for that. You could just use a closed system anyways. You don't need to make it so inefficient. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. It seems like typical politician response. They don't need what to do, so they're just doing something to make it seem like they're working on it. But yeah, I don't have high hopes for that. And I also don't think that Europeans actually want that, because as of today, most people already don't, at least that's my perception, most people don't really trust the state currently, and they don't really trust their politicians as it is right now. So why give them even more control over your money and your life by making it possible for them to actually cut you off by just blocking you from using it? So it's like, I don't know. It seems like something that's very hard to enforce.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if so, how it's gonna work out. And what do you think are the hardest challenges that you're experiencing right now by building Mion and making this as a mainstream payment?
Regulations. I mean, by far, the hardest stuff are the regulations in Europe. I mean, people have no idea how tedious European regulations can be. And the worst thing is not even that. So imagine there's like a checklist. You need to fulfill this 100 things, for instance, and then you get like a license to operate. But that was at least my initial thought. Okay, if I fulfill all of those points, they have to give me a license. That's not the case. The regulators that can issue licenses, they don't behave very logical in that sense. So even if you fulfill everything by the book, they just ask you, yeah, what else can you do in order to do more than the bare minimum, right? This is just the bare minimum. We need to see more than that. So there's like suddenly a new rule book that is not written down. And then you have to obey that new rule book. What? And you do all of those things. It's insane. It's so tedious and it's so insane. So you do all of those new things, and then they are just playing a really sad game that is basically, at least that was the experience. We applied for a VEST license in Austria. This is probably 2 years ago when we applied. We have now filed a MiCA license in the Czech Republic because we realized Austria doesn't make any sense. The Financial Market Authority in Austria is not supportive of startups. They don't want startups, and they just let you die. And essentially what they do is they cannot deny your application because you fulfilled everything that is required for your application. So they actually have to give you a license. They cannot just tell you, no, you're not getting a license. So what they do is they just keep asking you questions. And every time you respond to a question, they have 6 weeks to respond to your response more or less and keep asking you questions. So they just keep asking silly questions that you need to answer and just drain you, like drain your time, drain your funds, and every time you need to involve lawyers, obviously. So it's like, yeah. And if you then, at one point, it was like too frustrating for me. So I was looking for like a personal conversation. And in the personal conversation, it became very clear that there's no chance whatsoever. They're not issuing licenses to startups. They want large, incredibly large corporations that spend millions before even considering giving them any license. They treat it like a bank license, essentially, which is insane if you want any innovation in a country and you want to bring anything forward. And there's a good example with Bybit, actually. So Bybit, one of the largest exchanges in the world, they actually decided to get their European headquarters in Vienna and file for a MiCA license in Austria. And I know from inside sources that they were one of the first companies to apply for a MiCA license in Austria. This is like somewhere last year. And they expected to receive the license by December, latest January. And they actually got the license like 2 months ago or something. So it's like in the middle of summer, they finally got the license. And they had to spend, they built a new office. They hired like 100 people in Austria, had to spend millions on lawyers. So it's like, yeah, something that's just not obtainable for a normal startup.
Yeah, us Europeans being very harsh on regulations. Why do you think that is? Is it just like we are so risk averse? Just don't like any innovation? Like what's going on there?
I think the European mindset or system doesn't really allow for failure. If like the American mindset is pretty much, let's try stuff and see what works. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
At least we learned something. And in Europe, we are so afraid of failing that we don't even try. And I believe that people that are actually working in those, in the Financial Market Authority, for instance, that the people that are working there are just thinking about their careers and themselves and not really about the country. And they don't want to take any risk. They don't want to take any chance. They don't want to issue a license that might not be used, where the company might go bankrupt, where the company might lose funds, where something might go wrong, and that is then linked to them. So they're so afraid of drawing negative attention that they rather don't move at all. And I think that is like a European disease. I don't think that Americans have that.
Yeah. And do you think education is also a big part of all this within politicians and also for merchants, customers? How is education? Where do you see Bitcoin right now being perceived?
I would say like companies, merchants are way more open towards it. Obviously, there are some people that have like a negative impression when you start talking to them. So you don't start at 0, you might start at -10. But that's just the reality of it. We had like a lot of shit coins that went around and a lot of people lost money on it. And then we had this NFT wave. Yeah, a lot of negative associations with crypto in general, I would say. Although I would say Bitcoin has like the most positive association. And I at least always distinguish between crypto and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I think that's very important to make that distinction. So I would say people working at corporations are generally more open towards it and are excited about the opportunities. And they're just usually when you work in an economy, you have to be somewhat open towards new ideas. So it's actually very easy to get to talk with most corporations and merchants. Regulators, I would say, is something else. They are like, yeah.
Yeah.
At least my limited experience from regulators is a bit more close-minded.
Right. And I mean, you are about to announce as well your partnership with one of the biggest retailers in Europe. How did that come across? Like, what were there the challenges or opportunities, and how do you see it going from there?
Yeah, it's actually very exciting since it's really a large corporation that has roughly 100 billion of annual revenue. So it has really the chance to put Bitcoin in Europe, or Bitcoin payments in Europe, bring it into a mainstream perspective, in my opinion. Obviously, with a company of that size, you do have a lot of bureaucracy. You have to have a lot of loops. You have to talk to a lot of different departments. Sometimes those departments don't really talk to each other, so that creates other issues.
Gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously quite a risk adverse as well, which makes sense if you're listed at a stock exchange. You do have to be risk adverse, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah, processes just take longer as usual, I would say. And you have to talk with a lot of people and answer a lot of questions, make sure everybody's comfortable, and yeah, just be as honest as possible with them, and make sure everybody's comfortable with the solution.
And what are the opportunities now going from there?
Well, I hope that once we sign the contract, which basically just needs to be we just need to put ink on the paper now. So everything is negotiated and agreed, and I hope that we sign it soon now. I hope once that is done, it really puts us on the map in Europe. And it shows to a lot of other merchants that, hey, look, this is something that a merchant of this size is doing. He's trusting us. He's committing towards it. Why not give it a shot as well and talk to us and see what's possible for you, and yeah, accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. I think that's a really big opportunity for us.
So, okay, let's imagine now this whole thing becomes very mainstream. Where do you see the opportunities in terms of like how we do business, how we exchange value, how the world looks like?
Well, I think it starts slowly. So we don't expect 20% of people to pay with Bitcoin. Obviously, it will be a very small share in the beginning. Still, that small share will have a big impact for the merchants and for us as well, and helps us grow. Because you're still talking about a lot of money, essentially. But I think we have to start somewhere. And by doing this, we just accelerate everything. So by just staying behind closed curtains, more or less, and just use Bitcoin to buy and sell and just use it as a form of investment. And everybody's like, oh yeah, I made 10K with my Bitcoin portfolio. It doesn't really sound like a solution that is shaping the world or for better or changing it. It just sounds like a digital gold, which doesn't really have a lot of positive influence, I would say, in our society. But I truly believe that Bitcoin actually has a chance to elevate the world by actually shaping our society and make it fair, and just give people more money for their work, just make them obtain their value that they have, and not just put everybody in a hamster wheel that they have to run behind their next bills and see how they can pay them. Most young people today are not able to afford their own homes. So they just be caught in this rent cycle where they just need to pay more rent every year, and they're just completely dependent on others. So it's just, I don't know, like a future without Bitcoin seems like a very dark future. Yeah.
Very dark.
And I hope that we don't. I don't know if it's Bitcoin ultimately. It might be something else. I might be completely wrong, but I hope that we find something that is decentralized and not driven by inflation, because the current system is very clearly dying, and it doesn't it is not a prosperous world that we are looking forward if we don't change anything.
Yeah. Also, that's also one of the reasons why I started the podcast, right? To look into that and how do we do something about this? How is this new world in the making that is allowing maybe all these amazing sustainable solutions that are there, but they're not really financially right now very prosperous or financially viable because of the whole economic system that we have. So if we do actually move into a financial system that is maybe a bit different and allows deflationary abundance to just flourish and happen, then maybe we see a whole other world emerge as well.
Yeah, where we are not just driven by short-term greed.
Exactly.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. So what kind of things have you learned so far? I guess also starting a business inside of the Bitcoin community is very different experience, not just now from a legal and regulation perspective, but also, just the support amongst Bitcoin affine people. I think it's very different, right?
Yeah, it's actually when I started all of this, I thought, hey, let's go to a few meetups and see where I can meet other people and just talk to them and see what they're up to and just run my idea by them and see what they have to say before I actually jump into this.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Bitcoin meetups and I went to crypto meetups, and I felt like I'm on Mars. Like the comparison couldn't be bigger. It was insane. Like the Bitcoin people were they were so open, supportive, and it seemed like we share the same value system. So money wasn't really a topic that people talked about there. It wasn't about like, let's get rich. Nobody made the impression of, hey, let's get rich. Everybody just made the impression that they want to improve the world and they actually believe in this, and everybody seemed to have good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to those crypto meetups and I was shocked. So it was just about, where can I put my next money in? What is about to explode? What is about to make me my biggest return? And people just talked about money, and it was so materialistic, and everybody was just flashing their designer brands, and just I felt so misplaced there, and I was like, wow, this is really eye-opening. Those people have like no value system. They're just looking for money. And these people actually have a value system. They are trying to change the world. And that was actually one of the reasons why we decided to stay strictly in Bitcoin and not offer any other crypto payments. Also, economically, it makes sense because most people that own crypto own Bitcoin. So about 80% of people that actually own crypto, they do own Bitcoin. So it actually makes more sense to focus on one thing and become really, really good at it than doing like every other system as well that might eventually die or die off slowly, where you have to still support it and put a lot of resources on those networks to actually make sure that everything is secure. But yeah, one of the reasons was also that I didn't want to be in that bubble.
No, I get that. Yeah. And so if we have the option now of paying in Bitcoin, how is that tax-wise as a customer? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest things that is kind of inhibiting us to really use it as a form of payment in the day-to-day.
So when I see most people today pay through Lightning Network on Bitcoin conferences.
Can you actually explain quickly, briefly, for someone that doesn't know what Lightning Network is?
Okay. So essentially, the Bitcoin blockchain itself is amazing, but it has three big flaws. And one of them is, for instance, that you are kind of limited by the block size to about 7 transactions per second. In comparison, Visa, MasterCard are about to process 65,000 transactions per second. So if you would like to use it as a global payment scheme, it never works because you will always have a huge backlog of transactions. The other big issue is because the way the blockchain is designed, you have a new block in about every 10 minutes. So a blockchain transaction might take you 10 minutes, right? And if you're standing at the cash register in the supermarket, nobody wants to wait 10 minutes in order for the payment to be true. And the other big issue is that consumers would have to pay the miners in order for their transaction to be processed. That's just the way the blockchain is designed. So we also know there's like a lot of market research in why people choose which payment method. And believe it or not, the most important reason is I don't want to pay more money on my payment, which makes sense. So if people have to pay more just to pay, they most likely are not going to use it. So Bitcoin payments been around for a very, very long time on the blockchain. I believe BitPay actually started in 2013 or so. It never really picked up on blockchain due to those reasons, right? And then you might have like the mining fees also are demand driven, right? So they might explode. So instead of 20 cents, you might be paying 16 euros to process the next transaction.
Yes.
So that is also a big issue. And then the Lightning Network is basically resolving all of those issues. The Lightning Network is a layer 2 solution built on the blockchain. So basically everything is secured by the blockchain. You lift through a blockchain transaction, you basically lift Bitcoin into a Lightning Network, and then you can use them freely. It's basically like a normal network, like any kind of network. You have nodes that talk with each other through channels, and everybody that has a node or operates a node can open a channel to any node in the network, basically. And through that, you have like this spider web system where everybody can talk to each other, and people can talk through their connections with each other and send money. So I don't need to have a direct channel to you. I can send you money through somebody else that has a connection to you and is connected to me, for instance.
Okay.
Which makes a lot of sense. So transactions are now scalable to infinity. You're just limited by computing power. So you could have way more than 65,000 transactions a second. So it actually makes sense. Transactions are instant. You don't need to wait 10 minutes. It's actually, so when we test it out on our service, it's actually, you press pay, and the second I press pay on my wallet, I already see the confirmation on my screen. And as consumers, when you use the Lightning Network, you don't really have to pay for the transaction. So Lightning Network is way, way cheaper than the blockchain. You don't need to pay miners because you can do as many transactions within the Lightning Network as you want. And once you just want to settle, you go down to the blockchain. But that is mostly, you don't operate your own Lightning node. This is all handled for you by your wallet. So you don't need to worry about any of those things. For you, you just have like instant payments in real time without any fees. So it's actually a dream for consumers and merchants.
Wow. And who pays for the compute power?
The node operators. So whoever is operating the node pays for the computing power. Sometimes you do charge a small fee, but we're talking about microcents. It might go up to 1 cent. But the beauty about the system is, so we have Torque, the world's best Lightning node management tool as well, which is why we merged with Torque to form Mion. That basically is such an intelligent system because everything is algorithm driven and you can create your own rule sets. Basically, if I would like to reach you, I don't have just one pathway to you. I have a lot of pathways, right? And it's also the job of this tool to figure out the most efficient path. So most of the times the transaction is completely free and instant.
Wow. It's genius. Okay, sorry, back to the previous question. Let's wrap it up again at the taxes. How do we do in daily payments, but then it's constrained by taxes.
So taxes is handled per country individually.
Yeah.
So every country has their own laws and regulations how they want to deal with that. Some countries, I believe Germany, if you hold your Bitcoin longer than 5 years or so, you don't need to pay any taxes on them.
Oh, interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah, if you then sell them. Honestly, I believe that if you use it for payments and you use your own wallet, most people will probably not report it to the tax authorities. At least that's what I'm seeing. And be like, yeah, I spent like 200 euros or 500 euros on this. Yeah, and I don't think that tax authorities will go after them right now since it's so tiny. So they don't really care. But what we do have in our system is we do have an entire transaction history that you can export for your tax statement if you actually use the resolution to pay with us. And if you really want to be like super correct, you can then report to the tax authorities that you paid, I don't know, like 80 euros in Bitcoin in transactions, and you bought them, because that's where it really becomes crazy actually, because you have to report when you bought them at which value.
Right.
And mostly, I don't think people are doing this. They're using services that do this for them. And then you have to calculate how much profit you made on those things and how much of that profit do you have to tax now in your country. Is it 20%? Is it 27%, etc.? So yeah, it's an issue. But
so how do you see that as like, okay, imagine I am a cafe, a supermarket, something like that, and I want to offer Bitcoin payment. But then people are like, okay, so how is that legally tax-wise option? Like is that this option?
So merchants don't need to tax it since they're getting euros from us. They don't handle the Bitcoin at all. Consumers that are spending their Bitcoin technically have to pay taxes on them, yes.
Okay.
But it depends on the country. So it might be that your country does not require you to pay taxes on them. I believe in Portugal, for instance, you don't need to pay any taxes on Bitcoin profits.
Okay, cool. Okay. So it could actually be very viable within a few years, maybe if also like it's in general more mainstream, maybe to see.
I honestly believe that. So currently, the central banks classify Bitcoin as an asset and not a currency.
Yeah.
Right. Which basically leads it to being taxed, right? Because if it would be a currency, it wouldn't be taxed.
Right.
So once they change that classification, I believe all of those things are not an issue anymore.
Yeah.
So I think we just have to start somewhere. I don't think that any tax authority, I might be wrong, so don't take my advice, pay your taxes. Not responsible for anything you do. But I don't think any tax authorities are going after you if you spend a bit of Bitcoin on something. And I don't even think that they have any capabilities. I mean, we talked about this off camera. In Germany, you have like pretty old school tech in most apartments. So I would be very surprised if they would even consider this. But yeah, you should pay your taxes, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Any key learnings outside of like inside, outside, whatever, in the whole process of building the startup?
Key learnings? What do you mean by that?
As you were saying that in Europe, we are not really used to the failing learning culture. They don't have to be failures, but parts of the process of building a startup. And like, especially in a world where you are proposing something very, very different, very, very new. And yeah, I can imagine it must be very challenging in general, besides like, of course, like all the regulation that you already said, but maybe there are like some takeaways for someone that maybe is thinking about also creating something in the Bitcoin world or just a startup that is like going into a direction to really have an impact.
So what I would advise somebody who wants to pursue a startup in this area is expect things to go wrong. Expect your expectations to not be met. I mean, there are so many things that can and will go wrong, and you have to fix them. Just don't get discouraged. I think this is actually the most important quality. It's persistence.
Yeah.
It's like there were so many things that happened where so many people would probably just quit and just say, okay, you know what? I'm going back to my corporate job. I get better pay for less hours and I don't need to worry about any of this shit. But ultimately, I think you just have to keep going, and you just don't get discouraged. See the greater good that you're trying to achieve, and be prepared that things will fail, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There are so many good people that will always help you. You just need to ask for help. This space is amazing. Bitcoin as a space in general is filled with really kind and good people that support you if you ask for their help. And be grateful for that and use the opportunity.
Very interesting. Yeah, I love that, especially, persistence and things are just, you never know how it's going to go, right? There's so many things that you can't control.
Most likely it's not going to go well, but
it's very humbling, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you're also doing it with a co-founder, so I guess also that helps, no?
Yeah, that's so if you're doing it solo, wow, you're in for you better have like a really supportive family that is willing to listen to all of your problems, because you will lose all of your friends. It really helps to have a co-founder that you can just share the pain. You can just discuss things before taking big decisions. That is actually really, really helpful if you have somebody who's like a mentor in your world, who's like able to discuss things with you, to understand you, to really challenge you as well. That is so valuable, and it's something that I would advise everybody to. But it has to be the right co-founder. So it shouldn't be like, just don't get a co-founder to have a co-founder. You will be closer than any marriage, I would say. So, choose carefully. It has to be a good fit. And there will be times where you probably won't like each other, but there will be, most of the times, you will be very thankful and grateful that you have somebody that is there who can pick things up if you're down, and who can help you and whatnot.
Yeah, that's very nice. And I guess you also complement each other, or how do you?
Yes. So Henrik has he has a background in IT. Actually, he has a business background as well, but he worked mostly in IT during his personal career, and he worked for K33, or he was one of the founding team members of K33, or Arcane Crypto. It's like a crypto exchange from Norway. They had an IPO in Sweden a while ago. So they actually did very well. And he worked as the CTO there. He built up all of the tech, and he's a very collected, thoughtful individual that is taking things slowly, I would say, and careful. And I just run with my head through the wall and see what works. So I think that complements us very well to actually do this.
Yeah, it's very nice to have. I mean, I've never really actually had a co-founder, so it's very nice to hear and listen to other stories. And also, I would love to pick your brains on where we're going. Since so you're basically creating the starting infrastructure for us to be able to use Bitcoin on a daily basis. How do you see in general, like all the tech developing? Maybe you have a personal opinion on this new world that is kind of taking place, shaped by so many different factors, that maybe you have an opinion on where we're going.
I actually believe that this is a really big opportunity for Bitcoin, because the system is designed to be so efficient with the Lightning Network, right? If you look at traditional payment systems that we have, they are very inefficient and they are slow. They don't really work well. There's a lot of area for attack, a lot of things that you could abuse within their systems, and actually get abused. So it's just not built for the future that we are heading into. At least it seems that way. And I believe that, for instance, machine-to-machine payments will become way more important in the future. And where micropayments are also something that I see become very important in the future. I mean, you see it already with cars, where you don't get charged one time for the price of the car. You're now also getting charged for stuff within the infotainment system. You're getting, I mean, BMW famously charged people a monthly fee for the heated seats, which, yeah, that was a few years ago. That actually backfired. But yeah, they are going into that direction. And I believe that people also, I could see Netflix and other streaming service move towards a system where you pay per use and you don't pay a monthly subscription. So micropayments will become, in my opinion, way more interesting as a use case in the future, as well as the machine-to-machine payments. We had an interesting discussion. One of our investors is exploring opportunities on autonomous oil rigs.
Autonomous what? Sorry?
Oil rigs, so offshore oil rigs.
Yeah.
Where you drill for oil.
Okay.
And apparently they're designing the new generation of those things to be fully autonomous, so you don't need any humans. And in that case, you're still using a lot of contractors and subcontractors and whatnot. So you need a system to pay each other for services facilitated on those oil rigs, because they're basically a city. Those things are huge. A lot of things happening there. So yeah, I think machine-to-machine payments will become very important with AI coming up, taking over a lot of jobs. And a system that can already support that today is the Lightning Network. It is there. It's very, very scalable. It's very convenient to use. It's very cheap to use. We just have to start using it, I believe. And what is certainly not able to support it is the traditional payment system that doesn't work.
Because there's so many middlemen that also need to be paid.
Yeah, you have like you're talking with two banks always. You're talking with a payment scheme, sometimes even a card operator in between and whatnot. So you have so many parties that all want to take their share of the payment. Then you're using slow systems that are not really suitable for real-time payments. I mean, they talk about real-time payments for 20 years now and didn't really figure out how to do it. And micropayments as well, they simply don't work. So if you are a merchant that is having like an average transaction of €5 from your consumers, and €5 is not a micropayment, that is just a small payment, you will probably spend like 5 to 10% on payment fees. So it's like, yeah, it's insane how much they will charge you on payments if you don't have a lot of, if you don't have big transactions. And if imagine now you have a transaction that is like 12 cents or so, you will lose money with that transaction.
Gosh, okay. And with Lightning, this is basically zero.
You could just send a person 1 cent without any fees. So it's just, the system is designed to be really, really scalable. It's a great system that is actually built for the future, it seems.
Nice. And even with the digital currencies like euro and stuff, that would also not be possible.
I think it won't be because they will screw it up like they always do. Yeah, I don't have much trust in them. I, I, I don't see it happening. I don't think they are capable of doing it. I might be wrong. I've been wrong in the past with other things as well, but yeah, I'm quite skeptical about that ever seeing daylight.
Right. No, interesting about the machine-to-machine payments. I mean, with the AI agents now, possibly very soon being able to do whatever they want to, basically. Are you scared of all that?
Depends on who I'm talking with, I would say. I mean, there is a lot of scary stuff, but ultimately, I would say I'm scared about other things. I mean, it seems, I don't know, if we are really waking up an artificial god that, I mean, there's nothing that you and I can do about it anyways. So why really bother and get worried about it? It's like, I have the hope that it transforms our future to something positive, and it actually, I mean, it has the potential to actually do a lot of good. It has the potential to do a lot of bad as well. There are like both ways it can go. I hope that the people in charge are smart enough to do the right things and yeah, not go crazy.
Do you see the option of AI being decentralized also on something like blockchain, like the Bitcoin blockchain?
I don't think so. I think it's like, it's something that people, I mean, it's kind of, we are in this AI race. I'm not an AI expert, I have to say. So the way I understand it, we are in this AI race, US against China. Europe is not doing anything since we are already talking about killing it with regulations before it even started. But yeah, that actually describes the European Union. We don't have a serious AI startup in Europe, and they're just talking about how can we kill it with the regulations before it even starts, as if we have any influence what the Americans and the Chinese do. Anyhow, I think it's kind of like a race that has started, and everybody is pushing the gas pedal and just accelerating full speed ahead, and they're not really looking left and right. They're just trying to get ahead of the competition. So I don't think that they put too much thought into that, and I don't think that they give it away as well. I think this is something that they will protect dearly, and a lot of rich VCs invested a lot of money into very big AI startups, and yeah, I think there's a lot of power centralized there that has a lot of influence.
Yeah, for sure. I have no knowledge about this, but do you see it technically possible to decentralize the compute power?
I don't think so. It has so much. I mean, decentralizing something on a blockchain is not really efficient. It is quite inefficient, actually. So why are you doing it? Because you need complete truth, you need transparency, and you need something that cannot really be manipulated. So I don't think, I mean, Google and OpenAI, they're literally building their own nuclear power plants to power their AI systems. So I don't think that they could lift this into a blockchain or something like that. I don't think that would be feasible or scalable. Also, I don't think that they would ever do this. I mean, they're spending so much money on it.
I'm not expecting them to do that, for sure not. Like, no. And what other things would you then be afraid of more than this? You were mentioning that you were like that, not so much about agents you're afraid, but maybe other things.
I'm actually afraid of aging demographics, I would say. And it's like our society is becoming older and older. I mean, in Germany already 50% of the population is above 50 years old. So that's like, it's significant. And in 10 years, what was the number, by 2035 or so, I believe like 50% will, or 40% in Germany, and more than 40% in most countries will be pensioners. So we have an incredibly aging population. I just think the entire system that we have, the socialist system, social security system, all of those systems will collapse. They won't work, and it won't help if the German chancellor is suggesting that people work 2 years longer. It doesn't change a damn thing, just buying himself a year or two. But I think that we are in for a rude awakening with our socialist systems, and young people have to pay the bills more or less. And also, this might be a huge opportunity where I might be able to take over and solve that issue. I don't know how yet, but it's probably the only thing that could solve it. Yeah, so yeah, let's see what happens, I would say.
No, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of aging population, I think, everywhere in Europe. Personally, I've actually never really thought about pension, like a public pension, you know? It's like, well, I'm not even considering that's gonna even be around when
It won't. I mean, we are paying into it, but we will never see it. It certainly won't be around when we go into pension.
No.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's for sure getting interesting. I guess that's why we are asking all these questions and that we are looking into. So what other options do we have? Because it's definitely changing, right?
Yeah, it seems like we are in a very exciting timeline where a lot of things can happen. I don't know which direction it will go. I hope it goes into a good direction. But yeah, a lot of systems. I think this financial system will collapse probably within the next 10 to 15 years. So will the social security system collapse? And what will happen then? Will we fall into chaos and anarchy? Will we have a replacement? I don't know. That's something that we have to see.
How do you think it's going to collapse? In what way? And why?
So at one point, so if you're always printing more money and you're making more debt, at one point, the entire system is just not feasible anymore. It cannot carry itself anymore. So what were the latest numbers? If the United States keeps spending the money the way they are spending it today, they will be bankrupt in 11 years. So if they keep doing what they are doing today, they're gone in 11 years, or the currency will be inflating like crazy and everybody will lose the trust in the US dollar, which is a world currency and used for basically everything. So what will happen from that point on if people lose trust in the US dollar? I don't know, like the entire financial system is just doomed to fail at one point. So the question is just, it's not if it will happen, it's just when will it happen and what will happen then.
Right.
And
do you see the Chinese power kind of rising, or?
I actually think they are in one of the best, I mean, demographically, they're in a terrible position. But like from an economic perspective, they're actually in a good position, I believe. Demographically, they have their own issues. But yeah, they also have to deal with, they don't have the most natural resources within their own country in terms of sustaining their own population with food and whatnot. And they also have to deal with a huge aging population that they don't really know what to do with. But yeah, I don't know. I think if it fails, everybody is influenced by it and not just one nation. I think everybody will feel it.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, since we're already in the projection, like I always ask my guests to say, so where do you see that we're gonna be in 5 to 10 years?
We as in?
As in whatever you want as Europeans, we as like whole population, we as the world, we as a living planet? I don't know, whatever you want.
Well, I hope that within the next 5 to 10 years, we are in a society that is way more open-minded and fair and actually working towards greater goods and not just short-term greedy profits. And maybe AI might be really useful in this as well, to really put some focus into things and perspective, because currently it seems like everybody is just trying to have the most toys before they die and just accumulate all of those toys, which seems like a very dumb way to live your life, and actually a very dumb way to be as a society. So I hope that I think there are a lot of exciting things happening. I mean, with SpaceX, reusable rockets, with Bitcoin being around, with AI being around, there's so many really exciting things going on in the world. We live in this timeline where basically everything is getting reshaped now. So there's plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of exciting stuff. Just be open-minded and see what happens. I have no idea where we're heading towards, but I'm sure it will be a hell of a ride.
Yeah. I mean, I was asking myself right now, when you were responding, if all this has made you less risk averse.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because everything is just, I don't know, like, yes. Let's just say yes.
Okay. Cool. Let's keep it with a yes. Okay, cool. Yeah. You're already kind of tapping into that. Is that then also the new world in the making for you? Because I always ask also, what is a new world in the making for you?
Yes, I would say so. I think the traditional, the system that we live in is pretty much like everything was more or less established after World War II. So that is the system and the society that we in the West at least live in, and also in China with Mao. But I think all of this is changing now, and you cannot cling on to it. There's like no chance. I mean, they will try to keep their system running as long as they can, but they won't be able to cling on to it. There is a lot of things happening. There's a lot of things changing. They're not very competent. It seems like they don't really understand all of this. I don't think there's anyone who actually understands all of it fully. So there are a lot of wild cards around, let's say, that can go in any direction. So it's definitely a new world in the making, and see what happens.
Fascinating. Anything that has surprised you in that whole like really unexpected world right now that has really surprised you recently?
Recently, what is recently to you?
Whatever you want it to be, honestly. It can be in the last years, the last month, last week.
I mean, what really surprised me was all the AI development, obviously. That is one of the most exciting things happening, I would say, that has a huge potential to go in any direction. It could be very scary. It could be very hopeful. Let's see what happens. What really shifted my own thinking is the perception that, like, from the outside, I always thought, hey, everything that we have here is a good running machine. Is like everything's, it's like people know what they're doing. Everybody's competent, and kind of like this naive world perspective, and like actually dealing with those departments and dealing with regulators and dealing with all that stuff, that actually really shifted my perspective on governments and societies, and it's kind of shocking, actually. Yeah.
It's really interesting because I get those two perspectives in Spain and Germany, and the impression that Germany always gives is a very stable safety, security. This like idea that I don't know, that there's this very stable entity, whereas in Spain you have way more freedom in a sense. But then honestly, just seeing how systems sometimes work, Spanish government is sometimes way more efficient. And at the same time, yeah, there is this freedom attached to it.
It's interesting that you have that perspective on Germany. I think most people mean good.
Mm-hmm.
I generally actually believe that most people mean good.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
They're just too set in their ways, and like that is kind of like the issue that we have in Europe, I believe, that actually harms us or prevents us from going forward. It just seems like Europe is becoming more and more obscure and less important within the world, and we are just keeping everything the way it was for the last 50 years, and we just keep doing what we always did, and we don't look left or right, and we don't think about the future, and that's just, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, change is always scary, isn't it?
I think it's actually exciting. I think,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be boring without any change? It would be like
100%. No, yeah, for sure. But I guess like just fear is sometimes more powerful emotion sometimes, I guess, too.
Yes, I agree.
You know,
I agree.
Like
It's a stronger motivator.
but it's a very, yeah, for sure. Would you like to share something that we haven't covered before we go into the last question?
I think I don't have anything on my mind that I would like to share now. I think we talked about a lot of stuff.
Cool. So if you have a question that you would like to ask listeners, or something that they could sit with and ask themselves,
I would ask people, what do they want to... So what really motivates you? What do you want to see in the world? Where do you want us to head towards as a society, as a community? Because ultimately, this is what we are. We are just one big tribe of monkeys without hairs. So it's just... so ultimately, what do we want to achieve as a community? Where do we want to head towards? Is this... I mean, don't you want the future to be aspiring? Like, be creative, think about it. Yeah, let's try to improve this world and make it a better place.
That's a beautiful note to end. Thanks so much, Daniel. This is really great.
Thank you, Adriana. Really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thanks a lot.